What's going on, guys? Christian here from CK Wraps. Today I'm going to be doing this video on how to quote a car wrap. Now, this is a question I get asked a ton and figured I'd post this video on YouTube as opposed to my website because it's asked so often. This will help consumers down the road understand why a car wrap costs what it costs. It'll also help you in understanding how much to quote or why we quote what we do. Now, I only have one car here, so this is going to be very generalized, but I'm going to be also very detailed in explaining the prices and the reasons why, or the reasons to consider when actually quoting a car wrap. This car just got dropped off. It's being wrapped in satin black, which I've been calling frozen black lately. A lot of you have been asking, I just gave it a fancy name. Wrapping it in satin black, and all the videos for this car as far as installation goes will be on my website, ckwraps.com. I'll put a link in the top corner and in the description below for you. It's got a really fun front bumper. I've done this before, but it'll all be there. Anyways, let's get into actually quoting this car wrap. Now, there's many variables to consider when quoting a car wrap. First off, what color is the car? Is the car red or is it gray like this? Gray is a shade. Gray is a little bit easier to wrap. Not easier to wrap, like it doesn't make your physical ability easier to wrap. There's just a little bit less detail, okay? We don't see gray through, right now, look at those door jambs. Look at all those cracks and look at everything else. Do you see gray through there? I don't see any gray through there. But if this car was red, we're gonna see red all the way through all those areas. Right now, those areas look black, okay? If you have a black car, you're in luck because you're gonna pay probably the lowest price out of all of them because black doesn't require nearly as much work. Not nearly as much work, it does require a lot of work, but it doesn't require as much work as wrapping a red car. Now, if we're staying in the same color spectrum here, now if we're wrapping a car from gloss red to, let's say, satin red, not so much of a big deal. But if we're wrapping a car from red to green, there's a lot of work that's involved there, okay? We wanna make sure that we can cover pretty much every angle, as many as we possibly can, without taking the doors off. Now, taking the doors off requires a lot of work, and that's usually getting into wrapping the door jambs. I have two car wraps coming up. One is an Alfa Romeo, and one is a car like this, actually, Lexus IS 350. Both are being wrapped in chrome, and both are having their door jambs wrapped. The Alfa Romeo is actually having his trunk jam wrapped as well. So I'll be wrapping the trunk on the Alfa Romeo. What this costs to do is almost the same price as the actual car wrap, okay? Removing each door and wrapping each door, anywhere from $500 to $700 per door, okay? That's just generally sort of where it should be around. It wouldn't matter so much from car to car, depending on, again, how hard it was to take off the door. You're gonna need help with those. They're not light, they're very heavy. But that's a different ball game, okay? There's gonna be areas of a car that you're going to see color through no matter what if you're not wrapping the door jambs, okay? No matter what. I'll show you the area right now. Let's move the chair out of the way. The area right now, one of the areas right now, is right through here. You're going to see the hinges and the bolts. The hinges and the bolts are, well, behind the door. And we're not gonna wrap that because nobody's really paying for that. What we're trying to do is cover most of the exterior color. And when I say that, we're trying to cover that from as many angles as possible within reason. Now, there's also other areas too. Sometimes behind the hood over here, I can see paint in the engine bay. I'm not gonna wrap the engine bay. Why am I gonna wrap the engine bay? Nobody has in their life ever asked me to wrap the engine bay. And I'm not just gonna go out there and do it. If you wanna go ahead and do it, that's totally up to you, but you're over wrapping. Again, there's gonna be areas of a car that show color no matter what. This car right here, if I have a red car, I will actually, if I don't wrap far enough down from the pillar right here, I will see red when I'm standing here opening the door. I know because I can see down there right now. If this car, I can't see any gray in there right now. It looks black, it looks dark. But if this car was a brighter color like yellow, orange, green, just vibrant colors like that, you would see red all the way down into that area there. So what I need to do, and this is why it costs a little bit extra, is to wrap a red car, is either put an inlay in there or wrap down further. Do something that's gonna cover that spot right there. That's accessible. You know, that's within reason for me, and I can do that within a certain price range, charging a little bit extra. The person who has the black car, do you think that they're really gonna care if you wrapped down a little bit further in there and charge them more to do that? The visual outcome in the end is the same, almost, pretty much the same. You're not going to notice any difference. Now, I'm not telling you to cut the vinyl off right at the edges of the doors and stuff like that. If the customer has a black car, that's not right. You don't do that. You wrap around the edges always, and you wrap in a little bit further to give yourself better coverage. If I'm wrapping this car and it's black, and I'm wrapping it in satin black, I'm still going to wrap right up to this edge right here. We're going to walk through this whole thing, okay? I'm going to wrap right up to this edge right here. This way, when the door is closed, yeah, it's still wrapped, you know, like even when we take it outside in the daylight, you know, I don't want to see any gray, okay, for the most part. That's where I would go. Same thing with the back door. I go in about that far as well, because I want to make sure that that gap is covered. This one here, I'm not going to be able to cover it unless I remove the fender and wrap all the hinges and all the bolts, or remove the door. One of the two. You're not going to have access to it. No point in even worrying about it, okay? This is just not part of your quote. Again, if they're asking for the door jambs to be wrapped, that's going to be part of your quote. You're going to have to wrap all that stuff. That's where it gets expensive. All right, if it's not already expensive enough. Other variables here that matter are material types or brands. Let's start off with brands. Brands can cost $300 for a roll, or even less, depending on some brands out there. They can cost in excess of $2,500 to $3,000 a roll. What film are we using and what brand are we using? If we're using a brand from the US, let's say like KPMF, Avery, 3M, Cheetah Wrap, what else is there? I think that's about it. Are we using a brand from Italy, APA? Are we using a brand from France, Hexus? Are we using a brand from Germany? We have two there, PWF and Orful. We're using a brand from Belgium, we got Vivid, and so on. We're using Tech Wrap or whatever, or just some no-name stuff. There's a different cost. If all these brands have the exact same, let's say we're wrapping this car red, if all these brands have the exact same red, they could all be a different price, okay? So we have to actually consider the fluctuating cost of the film, of the color that the customer wants. I would offer them, you know, several different reds, explaining the advantages and disadvantages of each brand. I know them all pretty much. No brand is perfect. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. There isn't a single brand out there that is just great, okay? There isn't one. So as far as all you're asking, what's the best brand to use? There isn't one. There isn't a best brand to use, okay? There's just what you like to use and what the customer wants for the most part. They all generally last around the same amount of time and so on. Now, as soon as we get into that spectrum of like choosing a color, are we choosing a metallic red? Are we choosing a brushed red metal? Are we choosing a color shifting red? Are we choosing a chrome red? The price of these films dramatically changes, and that's within the same brand. Let's say we were to choose Avery, for example. We go with Avery Gloss Red. Okay, customer wants Gloss Red. Here's Avery Gloss Red. Okay, that's a little bit too boring for me. I want something a little bit more fun. Let's go Avery Diamond Red. Okay, price goes up automatically because the material costs. Okay, it's a different price. Let's say we go from, I don't think Avery has red brush metal, but let's say they have red brush metal. We're going to red brush metal. Again, the price goes up. Color flip and color shifting stuff generally is about the same price as brush metal. And then if we want red chrome, the price goes up even from almost double that from the actual brush metal or color flip stuff. Okay, we're getting into a heavy cost here just for material cost. Never mind the amount of work we have to do. The amount of work that we have to do in order to wrap this car is a lot already, as it sits right now. The customer actually went out of his way, stripped some things down. Took off the duckbill spoiler, took off his side splitters, I think he took off his front lips and so on, which is actually really nice. You know, I would have done it myself, but took it off, which is amazing. Saves me a bit of time. I didn't know that, but again, it came in, saves me a bit of time, you know, and I can focus more on the actual wrap itself. Now, other things to consider here are there details on the car? How many details are on the car? Good one to start off with is it 2 doors or 4 doors? This one is 4 doors. We have 2 extra doors and 2 extra door handles to wrap. It's gonna cost a little bit more than a 2-door car, exactly the same as this, if they made this in 2 doors. But if it's gonna cost a little bit more to wrap the 2 doors and the extra 2 handles because of the time spent. Not so much the material cost, more of the time spent. The material cost is what it is. The time spent doing it, that's where the cost comes in. Most of the time, what people are paying for when they're paying for work like this is labor. Labor is the part that costs the most. The film can get quite expensive. Again, you can get up to almost $3,000 in Canadian, actually for a roll of Hexus, even over that for a roll of Avery Chrome. So it gets pretty expensive. But that's not the average case for the most part. Usually you're around $800 to $1,200 a roll or so, it depends. But we're gonna get into details. So we have the doors, okay? Does this car, say for example, does this car have door trims that go down that are paint matched that we have to wrap? This one doesn't have any. It's very smooth, really nice, easy to work with. Nice flat door. If there's door trim there, okay, so you have options. You can then remove them, reinstall them, and wrap them and then reinstall them, or you can wrap around them. It's still hard either way, and there's more stuff there to wrap. If you're removing them, wrapping them, and reinstalling them, that's more work. And if that's the way your work ethic is and that's the way you want to do it, then you usually charge a bit more for that because it's more thorough. It's just nicer. You're doing a better job. If you're wrapping around it, you're not doing as good of a job. It's pretty much plain and simple. It's not going to look as nice as removing things and getting them out of the way. How much is there to remove off the car? That's a big deal. How much prep is involved? Because every single little piece has to get wrapped that's painted to match the car. The Range Rover SVR, for example, that was with inlays and seams like over 80 pieces. That's a lot. That's a lot of pieces. I would say ballpark on this one, probably looking at like 25 to 30 or so. The front bumper is actually pretty extreme on this thing. And it's really, really, really hard to make this front bumper look nice with using seams in the right way. Again, that video for that front bumper will be on my website eventually, guys. It won't be there right now, but it will be when I finish. In a few weeks, I'll have it posted. But again, there's a lot of pieces that are involved in cars and wrapping them. Now, this isn't doing paint protection film. We actually have to change the color of the car. Paint protection film, we put gloss paint protection film over gloss paint. Like they literally treat the car as if it were black, like if we were to treat it as if it was black, let's say, and kind of, I was gonna say half-assed it, because they trim everything off at the edges. And you see edges and you see areas that are uncovered and corners that are uncovered, and it's much easier actually to do paint protection film on a whole car. Paint protection film, on average, let's say for the material cost, $1,600, $1,700 for the whole car, okay? You can buy a roll of 3M for what, 900 to 1,000 bucks. It's not that much of a price difference, but paint protection film will get about 6,000 to 7,000 US dollars for a full paint protection film, a full body paint protection film, okay? Which they'll finish in like 2 days and not wrap any corners or edges. Crazy, right? There's a better market for it right now. On a car like this, we're looking at, let's say, around 3,500 to 4,000, okay? Somewhere around there. You'll find shops that will do it for less. There's always shops out there that will do it for less. Always do your research into their work. Make sure you see some of the stuff in person. Nobody's perfect, I'll give you that. I know that, hands down, I know that. I have stuff that fails sometimes, and that's just how it goes. You always got to repair it, but you don't want the car butchered at the same time. We're trying to obviously create the nicest overall visual aesthetic while preserving the exact finish that the car is in at the moment when it comes in. This car is not new. It's got 100,000 kilometers on it, which is about 60,000 miles. It's got a lot of stone chipping and stuff like that, and I'll show you. It's got a little dent on the gas cap. I'm not sure if anyone can see that on the camera right now. It's got a little dent on the gas cap that stands out to me right now. But again, it's driven, okay? Now, when we get into actually walking around this car, which we'll do right now, I'm going to explain certain things which kind of add into the cost of the actual price of the wrap, or the price of the quoting the actual entire wrap. So let's bring the camera over and have a walk around the vehicle this way we can see what's going on with it. Okay, as we walk around the vehicle right now, I'm going to point out a few things. Let's move my chair out of the way. Let's get to the front bumper. This front bumper is extreme, okay? It's very extravagant, and it's got a lot of flair to it, basically. There's a lot going on here, especially those scoops that are, right over there, and one right here as well. And then same thing right there. This is not an easy bumper to wrap, not the hardest, but it's not the easiest either. There's that to consider. This one has little washer jets, chrome. I don't remember these for whatever reason on the other model that I wrapped, but maybe they were there. We got to remove those. Generally speaking, when I wrap a front bumper, I'm going to remove the front bumper. This way I can remove the grille in the middle, the fog lights on each side, just make sure I get those covers off, those lights right there, and then get the headlights out of the way as well, because I want them out of the way. I want to do a nice job. I want to wrap around as far as possible, even though this car is gray and I may not have to, I'm going to. There are other reasons why I also remove the front bumper. The headlight sticks out right here, okay? If we actually look at it, Sticks out past the bumper. This makes it more challenging to actually be able to wrap the film in and down around here. It's not easy when things are in the way. Imagine leaving this on and trying to wrap the bumper with this on. You would be stretching around it, it would be a nightmare. And the vinyl would probably fail. Just in case anyone noticed, the hood looks off because it is off because it's popped right now. Now, as we come around, so I'll just go around the driver's side, who cares? It's all the same once I come around. As we come around, we've got a little emblem there. Okay, we've just got to remove that, reinstall it. I believe there's holes behind it, so it reinstalls very easily. It's not like we have to do anything in lining it up. It just has 2 prongs behind it. The mirror is a fun one. This is actually a really, this is not just a mirror cap when we look at it, okay? This is a full-blown painted mirror, base and all, okay? There's a lot to wrap other than the inside bezel. That's the only difference here. We don't have to wrap the inside bezel. If this was painted all the way through here, then we would have to wrap this as well. That would make the mirrors even more difficult to wrap. They're actually not all that difficult to wrap. They're just a bunch of mirror there to wrap. It's kind of a mirror cap slash not. It does have some black plastic to it. Again, if this was all paint matched, we would have to wrap it. So things to consider, right? One that comes to mind is a Honda Accord. A Honda Accord has a little camera here, and it's like a weird shape. And it'd be hard to wrap that. It wouldn't be very easy. The door handles, they're pretty standard. Removing these, I believe there's a clip on the inside here, and you actually have to open the clip first, and then you can actually slide these back, from what I remember. This guy's air freshener in his car smells bomb. It's making my whole shop smell amazing. Again, this car's worked, right? We've got a pretty heavy ding right there. It's not the nicest. Could probably have that pulled out later. Not a big deal. The rear diffuser. If this rear diffuser was paint matched, I'd have to up the price substantially because it's not easy to wrap something like this. Okay, it takes time. It's a lot of time out of it. I'm not wrapping it because it's textured plastic, okay? So I'm not gonna wrap it. You don't wrap stuff like that. The vinyl will most likely fail. It's gotta be, you know, if it has a chance, you'd have to sand it perfectly smooth. You know, then you'd want to make sure there's no oil leaching from it and so on because it's an oil-based product. The trunk here, not the hardest. You can see the trunk's a little bit messed up. You know, there's some scratches and stuff there from, I guess, the spoiler that was sitting there. I'm sure there was one there. You know, there's a little bit of rust building in behind here, nothing too crazy. But we do have this piece right here on top. This is a separate piece. We have to wrap it. See up there. All that's got to be wrapped. Everything underneath has to be wrapped. It's very important because you're gonna, when the customer opens the trunk, they're gonna see it. There isn't a whole lot else going on the car other than that kind of stuff. The antenna itself, it's not the hardest antenna to wrap. It is a more challenging one to remove though. It's actually one of the more challenging antennas to remove. It's hard to get that guy off. I may have to wrap around it. I did do a video on my website, actually it's coming up, where I wrap a round antenna on the Lexus that I just wrapped, the RC350. Now, the RC350, I believe the sunroof popped up and out. Now this one goes down and in, a little bit easier, which is nice. Every single little corner, that corner, that corner, that corner, that corner, that corner, that corner, they all have to be wrapped, every single one of them. That's just what we do. If we were doing paint protection film, none of them get wrapped, usually. None of them do. Unless they're doing like a stealth PPF or a matte PPF. Then they have to get wrapped. And then the price goes up with PPF. Now, if we get into here, I don't know if you can see or not. I'm gonna show you how far in we go as far as the wrap goes. This edge right here gets wrapped all the way up to this edge, all the way down. Inside the door jamb, sorry, to the top. Inside the door jamb, we go in far enough where the line's straight. Usually into here is pretty good. Sorry, this recess right here is a pretty good spot. That's a good spot to do it. All the way down, and then in the back area here, we go in right up to this edge right here. This way, when we close the door, we don't see the paint through there. There's no chance at all that we're gonna see the paint through there. The top one's easier to do because there's a seal that runs pretty tight to the edge. Not that tight, but there's a seal there, and so we don't have to wrap in quite as far. Right through here, I'm not sure if you guys can see it or not, but I can see, and you can probably see it actually too, the hinges and the bolts through the middle. I'm trying to stay out of the light and actually let you look at it without me getting in the way. But you can see, and I can see hinges and bolts through there. Down in the hood area, sometimes down in here, we can see the color as well. So then we have to wrap a little bit further. If the car is gray, we don't wrap too far down there because there's no point. When we think about wrapping a car like this, there's a lot of details. It's not the hardest car in the world to wrap, it's not the most to wrap, it's just a lot of details. And so there should be a minimal price that you're gonna charge when you're actually wrapping a car. You know, it's to be competitive, you're just gonna end up ruining it for yourself. You know, you're gonna spend maybe a week doing it, and everyone has to make money. You know, this is not something where, you know, we do it for fun, and we do it for the pleasure of doing it, but you also have to make money. You have rent to pay, a mortgage to pay, food to put on the table, you have kids to feed, so all kinds of stuff. You know, it happens. There's some bubbling on the tint here and stuff like that. I mean, I just noticed it now. This is probably a wet apply tint. These are hard taillights to tint. Okay, I give whoever credit doing that. They're not easy to tint. Again, I'm not sure if the front bumper has been repainted or not, but there's things to consider here, right? There's a little bit of liability also with the fact that the paint could lift in this area here because it's so thinned out. Look at all the stone chips, tons of them. Tons and tons and tons of them. This is what it is. The hood's got some, but usually on plastics, the paint's a little bit more vulnerable. On metal, the paint isn't as vulnerable. So we're gonna go through another thing that you have to consider when you're quoting a wrap. I'll put the camera down. One last thing to consider here when we're quoting a car wrap is the tier or the level of the car, okay? Status of the car, if you will. Is it let's start at the top, why not? Is it a Bugatti, a Pagani, a Koenigsegg, Lamborghini, sort of not really at the top. Then we go down from there. Is it Lamborghini? Is it Ferrari? Is it Porsche? Is it, okay, again, so on. Let's go down again. These are tiers, okay? I'm counting tiers here. Is it BMW, Mercedes, Audi, so on, Lexus, Infiniti, whatever. You get the point with those ones. Now, is it Honda, Acura, Toyota, and so on again? And now is it like Suzuki, say like Ford, Dodge, you know, those sort of cars where, you know, they're not typically too expensive and replacing parts is pretty affordable. There's liability when you bring in a vehicle wrap, okay? Always liability. Having insurance is a good thing to have, but I mean, do you necessarily really need it? If you're willing to pay out of your own pockets for replacing broken stuff, fine. I usually just pay. I would never put something through insurance no matter what broke. I would just pay for it. The most expensive things to break if you're taking off a front bumper and then removing the headlights are the headlights usually. If you drop a headlight, it could be a few $1,000 easy. That's just for one, so keep that in mind. I've only broken a tail light once. I didn't really break it, I kind of chipped it, but replaced it regardless. It wasn't the end all be all. It was an Infiniti, it was $500. Wasn't terrible, brand new from Infiniti. I have broken stuff in my life, obviously on cars, taking them apart. I broke the mirror, the glass, the actual glass on a Lamborghini Huracan, on Wheel Motivation's Huracan. Again, I went straight to the dealership, ordered a brand new glass, came straight from Italy. You know, he actually popped that in, and you know, it was good to go. That wasn't actually that expensive. It cost, that glass on the Lamborghini costs less than a BMW and a Mercedes glass. Something to consider, right? So keep that in mind. Now, if I break anything else in the Lamborghini, it costs a fortune. To remove the side mirror on the Lamborghini Huracan, I have to remove the window out of the door. That's something to consider right there. Just to remove the mirror off of the door panel, and I want to remove the mirror off the door panel so I don't have to put a seam at the very top. I don't want to put a seam at the top. And so I'm removing the window just so I can get access to the screws for the mirror. The window is about $1,500 US if I drop that. The mirror itself is like $2,500. So if I drop that, that's $2,500. Headlights and stuff like that get crazy expensive, guys. They have all this kind of crazy technology in them, or now like they're auto dimming when you're like driving down dark roads when someone's coming the opposite direction, all kinds of crazy stuff. Don't drop a headlight, treat it like it's your child, okay? But things do break. So we have liability, and that's the whole point of this, what I'm talking about right now. As the tier of the car increases, the cost of the replacement of parts increases, just the fact that you have it in the shop. What if something happens, you know, something falls over and lands on the car? Yeah, should you technically charge the customer for that? No, but if it was a Honda, it wouldn't cost you nearly as much if it is a Lamborghini. You're still gonna pay out of your pocket right away and it's still money lost, but you do have to treat these cars as what they are. There's levels. People work in their life, they climb a ladder to get to certain levels, okay? It's the same thing with quoting car wraps. You might not just get Lamborghinis and Ferrari car wraps right off the bat. You've got to kind of build up to that and start getting in anything that you possibly can and learning how to wrap properly before you move on to cars that people truly really care about. Maybe you wrap cars that are old clunkers and nobody really cares about. Those are great ones to wrap because it allows you to practice. Now, does your wrap show the best? Not necessarily, but it still allows you to practice. And as you get better, then you can feel like you move on to cars that people spend a lot of money on, they're hard working for, and they care about a lot. Think about this, if you're a car enthusiast, this is your baby. And I kind of treat my Jeep like my baby. I do take it out and beat it up a little bit, but it's kind of meant for that. Again, people like to take care of those cars. For this car having 100,000 kilometers on it, looks amazing still. It's actually in great shape. It's got a couple of really minor things, but it's in great shape still. All these variables here come into account when we're quoting a car wrap, okay? There isn't one way to quote a car wrap. To sum it up, for the most part, you have cost of material, you have your hourly rate. How many hours is it going to take you to wrap this car right here, and how much do you think that you're worth an hour? Do the math. If it's gonna take you 40 hours and you think you're worth $10 an hour, well, that's easy math, that's $400. So you're gonna only make $400 on your car wrap. Maybe your material costs $800, so you're gonna charge the customer $1,200. If you think you're worth more than that, maybe double that, maybe $20 an hour. So now you're gonna make $800 in 40 hours worth of work, okay? That's $20 an hour. That's not bad, getting up there. It's not great, a lot of people make that. If you're doing an excellent job, again, then you charge even more. Now, sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. Sometimes I quote a car wrap and I'm like, well, that took way longer than I anticipated because I didn't consider all the variables. I didn't think it was gonna be this hard to take this off and wrap around this piece and so on. Sometimes I win. Sometimes, I look at a car, I'm like, okay, 20 hours worth of work. Based off of my hourly wage, this is what I should be charging. Sometimes it takes me 15, 16, 17. The fact that the odds of it actually taking the exact amount of time that you quote or that you think in your head it's gonna take, it's pretty slim. It's usually either gonna be more or less. It's often more time than you actually think it's going to be, but that's good, okay? It's good in a way because you're actually taking your time to wrap it properly. If you're taking less time, you may not be wrapping the car properly, and that's a bad thing to do, obviously, because that will hurt your reputation when the car doesn't go out looking its best and lasting for as long as it could. People will get upset. There's only so many times a customer wants to come back to have things fixed. And that's for me when I have a customer who has got to bring something back, I feel for them in that way where it's like, hey, it's time out of their day to bring back a friggin' door handle wrap. Like I have to fix the door handle, let's say, or a mirror. It's usually those two, if anything. Nowadays, it's the mirror or the door handle that would fail. It isn't often like major panels fail. The odd time something happens, but that's pretty rare. Again, what I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, well, the customer has to take the time out of their day to come over here, drop the car off again, possibly for hours, leave, come back, pick it up again, and so on. Or just sit here and wait for it. Depends on what they want to do. Try to make sure that your car wrap leaves. Again, we're not perfect, things happen, and we always want to make sure we're doing the best job possible. But again, generally speaking, this is how we quote a car wrap, and that's generally what you want to do when you're quoting a car wrap, how you have to think about quoting a car wrap. Lots of work involved, not easy. There's a lot of square inches on a car to cover, and we're pretty much wrapping square inches at a time. Down to squeegeeing. I might be wrapping the whole door at one shot with a big piece, but I have to squeegee every single square inch of that because if I don't, we could leave air behind and so on. We have to clean. This car, when it leaves here, is gonna be the cleanest it's been probably in the past 5 years or whatever, not 5 years, but almost since they bought it, because I'm gonna clean every edge, every little detail, and it's gonna be super clean behind the lights, behind the headlights, behind the tail lights, in the vents and all that kind of stuff. It's gonna be clean in the gas cap area, cleanest it's ever been in a while. So there is that part too. We have a lot of work to do, and there's a lot involved in doing this. Don't undersell yourself. If you're good at what you do, make sure you charge appropriately for your hourly rate. If you're not so good at what you do, start bringing in cars where people aren't too concerned about it, and get those car wraps in, get that experience, get that practice going. Guys, I don't want to ramble on too much right here. I probably have been. I hope this video was informative and helpful, again, in showing you or explaining what to do and how to go about quoting a car wrap. Kind of more of a boring video to sit around and watch. I don't know if you watched the whole thing or not, but again, I hope it was helpful and informative. Again, those detailed videos on how to wrap a car like this are gonna be only on my website, guys. I'm not putting a lot on YouTube. Stuff like this I can put on YouTube for you guys, but those detailed videos are for the serious and those who really wanna learn. It will be there for you. And even disassembly on how to take the door handles off, the mirrors, the window trims, that sort of thing, the bumper, the headlights, all that stuff will be on my website. Guys, again, thank you for watching. I appreciate it very much. Take care.